You're watching Noir Street. I'm your host, Nero Wolfe. Every story hides a secret, and every shadow hides a clue. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. Subscribe, tap the like button, and join us as we drift into mystery. Chapter 1. The Sympathy show at death hits a block, like a siren you can't unhear. It doesn't matter if you were in the middle of shaving, reading the stock page, or arguing with your landlord about a leak that apparently exists only in your imagination. When the news comes, the air changes. People open their doors without meaning to. Curtains twitch. Somebody's dog starts barking at nothing and won't stop. That was how it began, on a raw afternoon, when the wind off the river carried grit and old winter into West 35th. I was at my desk in the front room of Nero Wolfe's brownstone, doing what I do best when Wolfe wasn't actively making work for me, keeping one ear on the street, one eye on the mail, and the rest of my attention on the steady arrival of bills that apparently bred in the dark. Wolfe was upstairs with his orchids. If you're new to him, you'd think a man who never went out unless he had to would go soft around flowers. Wolfe didn't go soft around anything. He went exact. The orchids got his discipline, his patience, and his affection in that order. If the world had left him alone and delivered a steady diet of fine beer, properly cooked food, and people who spoke only when spoken to, he would have lived to 200 and died still annoyed. That was the condition of the household at 3:30. Fritz in the kitchen beginning the serious business of dinner. Wolfe in the plant rooms beginning the serious business of not being disturbed. And me in the office beginning the minor business of trying not to get drawn into trouble. The doorbell rang. It wasn't the discreet, polite chime of a messenger. It was the long, eager press of somebody who believed that pressing harder made the world turn faster. Before I could decide whether to ignore it on general principle, the bell rang again, and then the knocker got involved. I sighed the sigh of a man who sees his pleasant afternoon being led away by the collar. When I opened the door, I got a gust of wind and a face that looked like it had been constructed in a hurry. Cal Grady was tall, big in the shoulders, and the kind of handsome that comes free with a confident grin, except the grin wasn't present. What he had instead was grief, large and fresh and displayed like a banner. "Archie Goodwin?" he demanded. "That's what my license says." He stepped in without waiting for a welcome, as if the front hall belonged to him, and he was simply returning from a long walk. His coat was open, his tie was crooked, and his eyes were glossy with the enthusiasm of a man eager to be seen suffering. "I've got to see Wolfe," he said, already raising his voice as if the walls needed persuading. "Right away." I closed the door, because you can't argue with a man and the wind at the same time. "Wolfe's upstairs, he's with his orchids." Grady stared at me like I had said. Wolfe was bathing in melted gold. Orchids? Somebody's dead. Somebody's dead all day, every day. In this city, I told him. "The trick is to make it your somebody before you start shouting." That was the first time I saw the mechanism under his grief. It hesitated. His mouth worked. The eyes flicked away and back again, searching for the right expression. The grief resumed at a slightly different angle. "Ruby's dead," he said, with a catch that sounded practiced but effective. "Ruby Ma. She lives. Lived across the street. Everybody loved Ruby. She was. She was." He swallowed hard. His throat bobbed. A man passing on the sidewalk could have done a slow clap. "I can't even say it. I just... Look, Wolfe. You know what he can do. He has to help." I didn't say the first thing that came to mind, which was that Wolfe didn't have to do anything except eat, sleep, and consider other people's ignorance. Instead, I said, "How do you know she's dead?" Grady's eyes widened, surprise or annoyance that I wasn't taking my cue. "They found her," he said. "In her apartment. It's all over the building. The police. There's a detective, a woman. She's down there right now." "Down there?" I asked. He jerked his head toward the front door, meaning the street, meaning the block, meaning the whole nervous neighborhood. "Okay," I said. "Who are you besides a man with a loud sorrow, Cal Grady?" He drew himself up, like his name was supposed to do the rest. I'm on the block committee. I handle things. I've been keeping everybody steady. I'm making sure Ruby's people are notified. And you decided to notify your grief first, I said. His jaw tightened. The grief shifted to indignation. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said pleasantly, that you rang my bell like the building was on fire, but you haven't told me how you got the news. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Then he said, too quickly, everyone knows. Everyone saw the police go in. There were men carrying a stretcher. In that case, I said, everyone can keep knowing without Nero Wolfe. He took a step toward the stairs. I'm going up. I moved half a step, just enough to make it clear that the stairs were as much mine at that moment as they were his fantasy. No, you're not. His hand clenched and unclenched at his side. His eyes glistened harder, and I could practically hear the gears of performance engaging. Archie, he said softly, with the tone of a man confiding in a friend, you don't understand. Ruby didn't have enemies. She didn't have. She was good. She was kind. She helped everybody. If somebody did this to her. If somebody did what? His breath came in, dramatic and high, killed her. There it was, loud, bright, and dropped on the hall rug like a bouquet. Now, it's one thing to say a woman is dead. It's another thing to announce murder in a stranger's hallway like you're unveiling a plaque. If he had simply blurted it out, I might have shrugged it off as panic. But this was neat. This was aimed. He wanted me to hear the word. He wanted the word to spread. And that was when the sentence from the beginning of your story snapped into my head, neat as a pin. How do you mourn what you haven't yet been told? I didn't smile, because it would have been unkind and also possibly dangerous. Instead I said, you're sure it was murder? He stared at me. Of course it was murder. Did the police say so? He hesitated. Just a hitch. Then his head jerked in a hard little nod. Everybody knows. Ruby. She wouldn't die without your permission, I suggested. His face flushed. Listen, you can be cute later. Right now we need Wolfe. You know how the police are. They'll botch it. They'll accuse somebody innocent just to close it. Ruby deserves better. Maybe, I said. But Wolfe doesn't do charity, he does business. I'll pay, Grady said instantly, too instantly. If he had cared about Ruby, he'd have said he would sell his coat, his watch, his blood. Instead he said he'd pay, like it was a coupon. Before I could say anything else, the front doorbell rang again, this time in a clean, sharp ring, the kind that belongs to the law. I opened the door and got Detective Nero Wolfe on my threshold. Yes, Wolfe. No, not our Wolfe. In a city with 8 million people, you're bound to get repeats, and fate has a sense of humor that runs toward confusion. Detective Nero Wolfe was medium height, medium build, and not medium anything else. She had the eyes of someone who had listened to 1,000 lies and learned to hear the difference between fear and acting. Her hair was pulled back tight, and she wore her badge like it was part of the uniform, rather than decoration. She stood in the wind as if the wind was afraid of her. Archie Goodwin, she said, like she had already checked the spelling twice. That's me, I'd say Wolfe, but he's upstairs. Her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Detective Nero Wolfe, Midtown North. I was told Nero Wolfe lives here. Correct, I said. He also eats here, sleeps here, and refuses to talk to police here unless properly motivated. Then her gaze slid past me and landed on Cal Grady, who had gone very still, as if the detective's eyes had turned him to stone. Mr. Grady, she said. Grady's grief reappeared, as if cued by her voice. He stepped forward. Detective, I was just coming down. You were going to see Nero Wolfe, she finished. Grady blinked. Yes, somebody has to make sure Ruby Ma, the detective said. Yes, someone has to make sure a lot of things. How about you start by coming with me? His eyes flashed. Am I under arrest? No, Detective Wolfe said. Not yet. But you're going to answer some questions. Grady's chest rose and fell. His grief tried to turn into outrage, but didn't quite make it. This is ridiculous. I'm the one helping. I'm organizing. You're loudly organizing, she said. And you told 3 different neighbors that Ruby was murdered. Grady's mouth opened, then snapped shut. Detective Wolfe looked at me. Mr. Goodwin, I'd like a word with Nero Wolfe briefly, I said. He's with his orchids. She didn't flinch. Then I'll wait until he's done. That could be a while. She nodded, as if I had told her the sky was blue. I have time. Behind her. The street felt restless. Even in the brownstone's front hall you could sense it, the block holding its breath, the way it does when something bad happens and people want to see it, but don't want to admit they're looking. I could picture the apartment building across the street, the small crowd, the uniforms, the doorman trying to look useful. I stepped aside. Come in. She came in. Grady came too. Though he looked like he wanted to melt into the wallpaper, the detective's presence had clipped his performance like scissors. She led her into the office, the familiar comfort of it. Wolfe's red leather chair, the globe, the books, my desk where I could at least pretend I ran the show. Always helps me think. Detective Wolfe didn't sit until I offered her a chair, and even then she sat like she might have to stand up quickly. Grady hovered. I said to him, "You can sit, the chairs are sturdy. Wolfe has tested them." Grady dropped into a chair, stiff-backed, hands knotted together. Detective Wolfe said, "I'll be direct. Ruby Mara is dead. She was found in her kitchen. We have not publicly stated the cause of death." "And yet," I said, "Mr. Grady has been advertising murder." Her eyes slid to Grady. "Exactly." Grady's face went red. "I said it because it's obvious. You think Ruby just fell." "People do fall," the detective said. "They also poison themselves. They have accidents, they choke. I knew Ruby," Grady insisted. "She wouldn't. She wasn't." Detective Wolfe held up a hand. "Save it. We'll talk downstairs," I said. "Why are you here?" She looked at me. "Because someone told me Nero Wolfe has a reputation for seeing what other people don't." "That's the brochure," I said. "The fine print says he charges extra when the police are involved." "I'm not here to hire him," she said. "I'm here to make sure he doesn't interfere." I blinked. "That's refreshing." "I've read about him," she said. "He likes an office gathering at the end. He likes to humiliate a room full of people. I'm not interested in being part of his show." That was the second performance of the afternoon. But hers was honest. She wasn't trying to impress anybody. She was trying to keep control. I leaned back. "Detective Wolfe doesn't interfere unless he's invited or irritated." "And you're easily irritated," she said. "Meme." I put a hand to my chest. "I'm calm as a monk." Her gaze stayed steady. "A woman is dead across the street. Your client list includes half the city's headaches. So forgive me if I'm not reassured." Before I could answer, the door from the hall opened and Fritz Brenner appeared, silent and solid as always, wearing his white apron like a flag of peace. "Archie," he said, "Mr. Wolfe wishes to know why the bell was rung with such urgency." Detective Nero Wolfe rose. "Tell him I'd like a brief conversation." Fritz's eyebrows lifted the fraction. They always lifted when the outside world tried to barge into our schedule. "I will inform him." He disappeared as quietly as he'd come, leaving behind the faint, promising scent of onions and something simmering. Grady jumped up. "See, Wolfe's going to—" Detective Wolfe cut him off. "Sit down." He sat down. I studied him. Cal Grady was the kind of man who liked being in the center of a room because he could feel the room rotate around him. He didn't like being placed in a chair by a detective. I said, "Tell me about Ruby Mara." His eyes went wet again. The grief returned, but it was thinner now, like fabric stretched too many times. She was wonderful," he said. "She helped old people with groceries. She watched kids. She knew everybody. She ran the neighborhood food drive. She didn't deserve this." "And you were close," I said. He nodded fast. "We all were." "That isn't an answer." His jaw tightened. "We were friends." "Did you date her?" I asked. His eyes flashed. No, Ruby wasn't. She wasn't like that. Like what? I said mildly. Human? He opened his mouth, then shut it, angry at himself for stepping into the trap. She was private. Detective Wolfe watched him with a look that could have been carved. Mr. Grady, you're going to tell me where you were between noon and 2, he swallowed. I was around, on the block, checking on people. I was doing errands. Name one person you checked on, she said. He hesitated again. Mrs. Leland, on 4. Mrs. Leland is in Florida, the detective said. That landed like a slap. Grady's face went blank for a second, and I saw pure calculation, fast and cold, before the grief tried to cover it. I meant Mrs. Leland's niece, he said. Detective Wolfe didn't react. We'll do this downstairs. The door opened again, and this time it was Wolfe himself. He filled the doorway the way he filled a room. With certainty, he wore his yellow silk shirt and his vest, and his expression said he had been disturbed and had noted the fact for future punishment. His gaze took in Detective Nero Wolfe, then Cal Grady, then me. Archie, he said, why is a policeman in my office? Detective Wolfe's mouth tightened at the word policeman, but she didn't correct him. Detective Nero Wolfe, Midtown North. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Wolfe, yes, she said. No relation, I assume. None I would acknowledge, he said. I had to bite the inside of my cheek. Detective Wolfe said, a woman has died across the street. I'm here because I don't want you involved. Wolfe looked at her as if she had announced she didn't want gravity involved. Your desire is irrelevant. Why do you think you can control my choices? Because if you obstruct... I do not obstruct, Wolfe said. I solve. Cal Grady surged up from his chair. Mr. Wolfe, Ruby Marr is dead. They're going to botch it. They'll blame somebody. Wolfe's gaze swung to him. Sit down. Therefore you are here to scold. I am not a child. If you have information to impart, do so. If not, leave. Detective Wolfe held his stare. We have not released the cause of death. Mr. Grady told multiple neighbors she was murdered. I want to know if he told you. Wolfe's eyes flicked to Grady, then back. He did. And what did you say? She asked. Wolfe's voice stayed dry. Archie asked him how he knew. He was unable to answer satisfactorily. Detective Wolfe nodded once, as if that confirmed a suspicion. Then we're aligned. I'm taking Mr. Grady downstairs. Do so, Wolfe said. Detective Wolfe stood. Grady stood too, his hands clenched. He looked at Wolfe with panic now, not grief. Mr. Wolfe, he said, you can't let them. Ruby deserves. Wolfe cut him off without raising his voice. Mr. Grady, if you truly cared what Ruby Marr deserves, you would tell the truth to the police. If you do not, then you care more for yourself than for her. That is common. Grady's eyes went hard. For a second the mask slipped all the way, and what was underneath wasn't grief at all. It was anger, hot, personal, and directed. Then Detective Wolfe's hand touched his elbow, and the mask came back, thinner than ever. As they went out, Detective Wolfe looked at me. Mr. Goodwin, keep your man out of it, I said. I'll put him on a leash. Her eyes flicked to Wolfe. Good luck. The door closed. The office settled. The street outside felt louder now because the law had carried one of the performers away. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, he said, why is a death across the street in my house? It's not in your house, I said. It's in our neighborhood. The neighborhood insists on sharing. Wolfe's lips thinned. The neighborhood is impertinent. He walked to his chair, sat, adjusted his bulk with the dignity of a battleship docking, and fixed me with a look that meant explain efficiently. I said, a woman named Ruby Marr was found dead in her kitchen. The police haven't said how. Cal Grady has announced murder to anyone with ears. He came here shouting for your help. A detective named Wolfe, no relation unless fate is bored, came to remove him and warn us off. Wolfe steepled his fingers. And you allowed them in. I didn't invite the wind either, I said. It comes. Wolfe ignored that. He said, this Cal Grady, You observed him. I did, I said. He's grieving like a man performing for a balcony, and he claims murder without knowledge. Exactly. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Then the question is not merely how he knows. The question is why he needs others to know. I nodded. I was thinking the same thing, only with less steepling. Wolfe's mouth twitched. His version of amusement, Ruby Ma. What do we know of her? Not much, I admitted. I've seen her on the block. Small, quick, always carrying something, smiles a lot. She's one of those people who belong to the neighborhood, the way the street lamps do. Wolfe's gaze drifted, as it always did when his mind began to arrange facts into shapes. And Cal Grady belongs as well. He belongs loudly, I said. He says he's on the block committee and handles things. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Men who handle things often handle them for themselves. I said, if you're about to tell me we're staying out of it, I should warn you. The detective specifically requested it. Wolfe stared at me as if I had said the soup was optional. Archie, I am never governed by a request from the police. That's what I was afraid of, I said, because it also happens that the dead woman is across the street. Wolfe's eyebrows rose slightly. Proximity, exactly. If it gets noisy, it interrupts your schedule. If it interrupts your schedule, you become involved out of irritation. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Do not presume to predict me. I don't predict, I said. I observe patterns. He snorted softly, which is Wolfe's way of admitting the world occasionally behaves like the world. Then he said, go across the street. I blinked. Just like that. Just like that, Wolfe said. You will observe. You will learn Ruby Ma's connections. You will learn Cal Grady's true relation to her, and you will learn why he trumpeted murder before he was told. Detective Wolfe told me to keep you out of it, I said. Wolfe's gaze was bland. She can keep herself out of my orchid rooms. That is our mutual agreement. I stood up, because when Wolfe gives an order, you either follow it, or you have a long conversation that ends with you following it. As I went to the door, Wolfe added almost casually, and Archie. Yeah, take care, he said. If Cal Grady is acting, he is acting for an audience. The audience may not applaud. I paused, hand on the doorknob, and felt the block outside like a held breath. Then I opened the door and stepped into the wind, heading toward a death that was already being turned into a performance, and toward the first real clue, sitting in plain sight behind Cal Grady's loud sympathy. Because grief, like money, is easiest to trace when it's being spent too freely. Chapter 2. The man who knew the time. If you've lived in New York long enough, you learn a special vocabulary for bad news. There's dead, which can be a heart attack in a barber chair. There's killed, which can be a taxi and a bad step. And then there's murdered, which is a word. People like Cal Grady toss around the way a boy tosses stones at a window because they want to hear something break. Wolfe had sent me across the street to observe, which in my case means I walked over with my hands in my coat pockets and my eyes wide open, pretending I was just another neighbor who had wandered out to satisfy a natural curiosity about tragedy. The building across from the brownstone was a respectable 6-story, with a doorman who took pride in not looking proud. That afternoon he was failing. His face had the strange shine of a man trying to keep his job and his composure in the same fist. Mr. Goodwin, he said when I entered, like he had been instructed to recognize me, which meant the instruction had come from Cal Grady, because Cal was the kind of man who appointed himself the manager of everybody else's day. Afternoon, Larkin, I said. I hear you've got excitement. Not the good kind, he murmured, and his eyes flicked toward the elevator, as if it might bite him. 2 uniforms were stationed by the elevator doors. Midtown North had arrived in force, which meant either they were bored or they were worried. Since the neighborhood was not famous for exciting crime, I assumed worried. On the 4th floor, the hallway was full of that particular smell that comes when winter coats and fear and old steam heat mix together. A couple of residents hovered at a distance, trying to look like they had reasons to be there, besides wanting a peek at somebody else's disaster. Apartment 4C's door stood open. A uniform kept the curious back, But Archie Goodwin has a face that suggests he belongs wherever he happens to be standing. And that's a skill you can develop without paying tuition. Detective Nero Wolfe was inside the apartment, not in the kitchen yet, but near the living room entry, writing in a small notebook. She looked up when I stepped over the threshold. "You were told to keep out of it," she said. "I was told to observe," I replied. I split the difference. I'm standing very quietly. Her eyes narrowed. Then she made a motion with her chin. 2 minutes. I took them gratefully. The apartment belonged to Ruby Marr. All right. At least it had the signs of a woman who lived alone and kept busy. There were neat stacks of mail on a small table, a bowl with keys, an umbrella stand that had been used, and a faint scent of citrus cleaning stuff that suggested Ruby liked her rooms to look as controlled as her life. But the kitchen didn't smell like citrus. The kitchen smelled like something sharp and wrong, the way a room smells when it has been disturbed and then made to sit with its disturbance. I didn't barge in. I edged to where I could see past the detective's shoulder. The body lay on the kitchen floor, near the table, face turned away. A man, dark hair, a cheap jacket, hands that looked too clean for the rest of him, as if he'd been careful with the one tool he couldn't replace. A woman in a white coat, medical examiner, or her assistant, was packing instruments with the brisk calm of someone whose day improves when other people's days end. Detective Wolfe watched her. Then her eyes came back to me. "It's not Ruby Marr," she said. "That hit me the way a sudden cold draft hits you when you thought the windows were shut." "Then who is it?" "Eddie Lane," she said. "Low-level courier. No fixed address we can confirm yet, but he's in our system." "Found in Ruby's kitchen," I said slowly. "Where's Ruby?" A faint tightening around Detective Wolfe's mouth. "That's one of the questions." "Another is why Cal Grady was wailing about Ruby," I said. "And then because my mouth sometimes runs ahead of my caution, and how he decided it was murder before you told anyone." Her gaze was flat. "You heard him." "I heard him," I said. "And he also mentioned something else." Her pencil paused a fraction above the notebook. "What?" He said Eddie's ring was missing. I told her, "If you've never watched a good cop receive an unexpected detail, you're missing a kind of art." Detective Wolfe didn't gape. She didn't swear. She didn't show any excitement at all. She just looked at me as if she was turning my face over in her mind to see if it had cracks. "We haven't released that," she said. "That's what made my ears perk," I said. Cal said the right hand was bare, a ring missing. The pencil began moving again. She wrote it down as calmly as if she were recording the weather. She didn't ask me how I knew. She didn't ask me whether I was sure. She just wrote it down and let the quiet do the accusing. Then she said, "Official time of death is 11:42 p.m. I raised my eyebrows. "That specific? Liver body temperature, stomach contents. The estimate's good," she said. "Close enough to make lies uncomfortable." "Cal's been saying midnight," I told her. "Like he watched the clock die with Eddie." She looked up. "He said that. Twice. Maybe more. Midnight. Not late. Or last night." "Midnight," I said. The kind of word a man uses when he thinks precision makes him sound honest. Detective Wolfe nodded once and wrote again. Then she said, almost to herself, "Truth slips out when someone tries to sound real." I blinked. That's poetic for a detective. She gave me a look. "It's practical people, rehearsing a story put in details they shouldn't know. They do it to look credible. It's the easiest way to catch them." I thought of Nero Wolfe upstairs, steepling his fingers and arranging facts. "You and my employer would get along," I said. "Don't push your luck," she replied. I shifted my gaze back to the kitchen. "So Eddie Lane, low-level courier with big secrets and small friends, you said?" "That's one way to put it," she said. "He runs packages, cash phones, sometimes documents. He isn't important enough to have protection, which makes him important enough to be used. And he ended up in Ruby's apartment," I said. "So either Ruby's mixed up in something she didn't advertise with her food drives, or Eddie brought trouble to her door, or someone brought Eddie to her door," Detective Wolfe said. I looked around again, letting my eyes behave like they belonged to me and not to my curiosity. Any sign of forced entry? No, she said. Door wasn't damaged, locks intact. So Eddie was invited, I said. Or he had a key, or the person who brought him in did, she said. And there was the faintest emphasis on person that made it feel like a hook set in my collar. I said, Cal Grady is on your list. He is now, she said. He's downstairs. He's been helpful. Helpful the way a loud dog is helpful when you're trying to hear a burglar, I muttered. She heard me. A corner of her mouth twitched, but she didn't waste it on a smile. Here's what you can do that won't get you arrested, Mr. Goodwin. Find out what Eddie Lane was delivering, and to whom find out who Ruby Marr actually is, when she isn't smiling at neighbors. That sounds like work, I said. It sounds like the truth, she replied. I nodded, because she was right, and because I'd rather nod than argue with a detective who wrote down your words like they were evidence. As I turned to leave, my eyes caught something on the edge of the kitchen counter, a small rectangle of brown paper, folded tight, the kind of thing you'd wrap around cash or a note you didn't want seen. A uniform's shoulder blocked the rest. I didn't point, I didn't ask. I just stored it away. Back in the hallway, the residents had retreated a few steps, pretending they weren't listening. Cal Grady wasn't there. He was downstairs, presumably performing his innocence for Detective Wolfe. I went down in the elevator with a uniform who smelled like cold coffee and long shifts. In the lobby, the doorman's eyes met mine. Is it Miss Marr? He asked softly. No, I told him. Not Ruby. His face loosened for a second, relief, then tightened again, fear. Because relief without answers is just fear in a different coat. It's worse, he whispered. It's different, I said. And in this city, different is usually worse. Outside, the wind grabbed at my coat and shoved me across the sidewalk like it had an opinion. I crossed back to Wolfe's brownstone, thinking about a man named Eddie Lane, who moved secrets for a living, a woman named Ruby Marr, who had vanished from her own apartment, and a loud neighbor named Cal Grady, who knew too much and announced it like a public service. When I stepped into our office, Wolfe looked up from his chair without moving any other part of him. Well, he said. It isn't Ruby, I told him. It's a man named Eddie Lane, courier, found dead in Ruby's kitchen. Official time of death is 11:42 p.m. and Cal Grady keeps saying midnight, like he was there watching the hands. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. And Ruby Marr? Missing, I said. Also, Cal mentioned Eddie's ring missing from his right hand. The police haven't released that. Wolfe's gaze went still, which is what happens when his mind has found something it likes to chew on. Ah, he said softly. The man who knew the time, and the ring. I leaned on the edge of my desk. You're not going to confront Cal? Not yet, Wolfe said. If a man is careless enough to reveal knowledge, he will reveal more if he believes himself safe. We will let him sing. And while he sings, I said, we find out why Eddie Lane was in Ruby Marr's kitchen. Wolfe's mouth tightened with satisfaction. Precisely, Archie, go find Eddie Lane's small friends. They may be more talkative than his big secrets. Chapter 3. Aggressive help comes with sharp edges. By the next morning, the block had a new routine. The way it always does when something ugly happens, people spoke in lowered voices while standing where they could be overheard, and they used names like they were passing contraband. Wolfe, of course, did not go outside to enjoy the neighborhood's communal anxiety. He stayed in his red leather chair where the air was predictable and the beer was properly chilled. I went to the kitchen for coffee, and Fritz, with the calm of a man whose world is governed by sources rather than sirens, poured it as if homicide were merely another item on the day's menu. When I got back to the office, Wolfe was already irritated. Archie, he said, that man is here. That narrows it down to about 3 million, I said. Unless you mean, I mean Cal Grady, Wolfe said, with the tone of a man saying toothache. I set my cup down. He came back. He did not merely come back, Wolfe said. He announced himself to Fritz as if entering a drawing room. He is in the front room now, speaking with the confident intimacy of a host. I grinned. He offered Fritz advice on how to roast a duck. He offered Fritz coffee, Wolfe said, contempt thickening the words. In my house, Archie. Remove him. On it, I said, and went out. Cal Grady was standing in the front room, as if he had always belonged there, coat off, tie straightened, grin polished and ready. He had a paper bag on the table and a bouquet of flowers in his hand, cheap ones too bright, bought in a hurry from a corner stand. He looked up when he saw me and widened his eyes with practiced warmth. Archie. Good, I brought coffee. Real coffee. None of that. No offense, but you know. He waved a hand toward the back of the house, meaning Fritz's kitchen, meaning our dignity. No offense taken on behalf of the kitchen, I said. What are the flowers for? For Ruby, he said quickly, and his face arranged itself into earnest sorrow again. I keep thinking about her, a sweet person. And now, Eddie too, 2 lives. It's monstrous. It was a neat trick, the way he said. Eddie's name as if Eddie Lane were a beloved neighbor, instead of an unknown courier who had died on Ruby's linoleum. And you decided to bring your monster into Wolfe's office, I said. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as if we were sharing a confidence. Listen, I'm helping. I've got information. I've got names. People are scared, Archie. They don't trust the police, but they trust me. That's the part that worries me, I said. He smiled like I had made a joke. Come on, let me talk to Wolfe. Just 5 minutes. I can take you to the right people. I know who Eddie was seeing. I know where Ruby might. You know a lot, I said, for a man who yesterday couldn't name one person he checked on. The smile tightened, the eyes flicked. Then he leaned in harder, as if pressure were persuasion. Detective Wolfe is playing games, he said. She's got that cop attitude. But Wolfe, you're Wolfe. He's smart. He'll listen. I'm trying to keep this from getting ugly. It already got ugly, I said. Summonan's dead. And someone's missing, he said instantly. Ruby, poor Ruby. I keep saying it. Midnight, Archie. Midnight. That's when it happened. I didn't correct him. I didn't have to. Wolfe was the one collecting his mistakes like stamps. What makes you so married to midnight? I asked casually. He blinked, then recovered. People heard something around then. A sound like a thump. Folks were up. It's the city. Which folks? I asked. He gestured vaguely. Neighbors, the Larkins, the young couple in 3B, Mrs. Heller. He said it too smoothly, like he was reading from a list he had prepared. That was Cal Grady's problem. He didn't simply remember. He performed memory. I said, all right, I'll tell Wolfe you're here. Good, he said, relief flashing as if he had won. And Archie, I brought leads. I can put names to faces. We're going to solve this. We, I repeated. He didn't notice the trap. All of us, the neighborhood, Wolfe, me. I went back into the office and found Wolfe watching me with that particular stillness that meant he had already heard enough to be annoyed. He's brought coffee, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. In my house. And flowers for Ruby, I added. Wolfe's mouth thinned. Ruby Marr is missing. The dead man is Eddie Lane. Yet Mr. Grady displays flowers like a prop. He also displays midnight like a religion, I said, and he's brought names. He says he can take us to the right people. Wolfe leaned back slightly, steepling his fingers. Then let him speak. But you will bring him here, Archie. I will not go to him. I returned to the front room and told Cal Grady to come into the office. He picked up the coffee bag like it was a trophy and came in with a brisk stride, smiling too widely for the circumstances. Wolfe did not rise. He did not offer a hand. He simply looked at Cal Grady the way an entomologist looks at a lively insect. Mr. Grady, Wolfe said, you are persistent. I care, Grady said, and set the coffee bag on my desk without asking. That's my flaw. I care too much. This block, these people, Ruby, yes, Wolfe said. You care, you cared yesterday. You care today, Your care today, your caring has become intrusive, Grady laughed lightly. Intrusive? Come on, you should see what the police do. They stomp around, they scare people, they twist words. I'm keeping everyone calm. Wolfe's eyes stayed steady, by telling them what to think. Grady's laugh faltered. Number by helping them remember. People get confused when something terrible happens. Indeed, Wolfe said. Sometimes they become confused into saying precisely what another person suggests. Grady spread his hands. Look, I'm not here to argue. I'm here to provide leads. Eddie Lane wasn't a neighbor, but I found out who he was. He ran deliveries for a guy named Sal Gatto. Low, level cash runs. And Ruby. Ruby knew him. She was trying to help him. That's why he was there. I watched the words land. Grady offered them with confidence, like a man laying cards on a table he believed he owned, Wolfe said. How do you know this? Grady's eyes widened. People talk. I talk to people. They trust me. Wolfe nodded slightly, as if acknowledging a nuisance. And you learned Eddie Lane worked for Sal Gatto? Yeah, Grady said quickly. Everybody knows. Wolfe's tone sharpened. No, Mr. Grady. Everybody does not know. You know. How? Grady hesitated. A small hitch. Then the confidence returned stronger, as if volume could substitute for truth. I was up late last night, he said. After the news, I couldn't sleep. I went around, checked on people. You know, made sure no one panicked. Somebody mentioned Eddie. Someone said he'd been seen with Gatto. Name the someone, Wolfe said. Grady blinked. It doesn't matter. It does, Wolfe said. Grady's jaw tightened. I'm protecting people. They don't want to get involved. They're scared. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Then your lead is worthless. Grady's face flushed. Worthless? Are you kidding? I'm handing you the trail. Wolfe's voice remained mild. A trail you have walked in advance. Grady leaned forward. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Ruby's missing. Eddie had a ring. Wolfe's eyes sharpened a fraction. Yes. Grady caught himself too late. His mouth hung open a moment, then snapped shut. His gaze flicked to me, as if I might rescue him from his own tongue. Wolfe did not move. He let the silence sit between them, heavy and patient. Grady forced a laugh. I mean, people said. He wore a ring. He's missing it. That's important. Wolfe said softly, and yet the police did not announce it. Grady's face went pale under the flush. I heard it. From whom? Wolfe asked. Grady swallowed. From someone. Somebody saw the body. That is unlikely, Wolfe said. The police did not invite the building to inspect the corpse. Grady's eyes flashed with anger now, not grief. Look, I'm trying to help. I'm not the enemy here. Wolfe nodded slowly. Sometimes, aggressive help is merely control wearing a pleasant expression. Grady's mouth tightened. He stood abruptly. Fine, if you don't want my help, I'll take it elsewhere. The cops will botch it, and you'll sit here in your fancy chair and pretend you're above it. Wolfe's eyes stayed on him. Leave the coffee. Grady stared. What? You have placed it in my house. You will not remove it, Wolfe said, as if discussing a legal principle. Fritz will decide whether it is fit for consumption. Grady's nostrils flared. He left without the coffee, without the flowers, without another word. His shoes thumped down the hall like punctuation. When the door closed, I exhaled. He's not subtle. Wolfe's gaze was distant now. Subtlety is not required when one controls the narrative. The narrative, I repeated. Wolfe's eyes came back to me. You will go across the street again, Archie. Detective Wolfe will love that, I said. Do not speak of that woman as if she owns the street. Wolfe snapped. Then, softer, Cal Grady is not merely inserting himself. He is shaping what others believe they saw and heard. He is rewriting yesterday. I frowned. He's steering conversations, correcting people, filling in gaps. Precisely, Wolfe said, and you will witness it. So I went. Across the street, The lobby had the tense quiet of a theater after the curtain falls. People spoke in whispers, but their eyes were bright. Cal Grady wasn't there. He had been sent away, and that had only made him more active elsewhere. On the 4th floor, I found 2 neighbors in the hall. Mrs. Heller from 4A, a thin woman with a mouth like a straight line, and the young couple from 3B, who looked like they had been delivered recently from someplace safer. They were talking. Or rather, Mrs. Heller was talking, and the couple was nodding. And I told him. Mrs. Heller was saying that it was around midnight, because that's when the building always gets loud. You hear a thump, you hear running. I stepped closer. Morning. Mrs. Heller jumped, then recognized me. Mr. Goodwin, from across the street. From the brownstone, I said. You said you told him it was around midnight. Who's him? She blinked, and for a second she looked like a woman waking from a dream. Cal Grady, he asked. He said it was important to be accurate. Were you accurate? I asked gently. Her mouth tightened. Of course, I was awake. At midnight, I said. She hesitated. Well, late. I was reading. The young woman from 3B piped up. Cal said the police. Time is wrong. He said they always get it wrong. Cal said that, I repeated. The young man nodded, eager. He said the thump was at midnight. He said, someone saw a figure in the stairwell, he said. I held up a hand. Did you see a figure in the stairwell? The young man blinked, then looked at his girlfriend, then back at me. Number, but Mrs. Heller said. I did not say that. Mrs. Heller snapped, then faltered. Well, I said, I thought I heard someone. I watched the way it happened. Cal Grady had asked questions, and the questions had come with answers embedded. The neighbors were now repeating his answers as if they were their own memories. A thump became midnight. Late became exact. A sound became a figure. Truth was being massaged into a story that belonged to Cal. I rode the elevator down and found the doorman, Larkin behind his desk, looking like a man whose world had been invaded by rumor. Mr. Goodwin, he said. They're saying Ruby's in trouble. They're saying a lot, I told him. What did you see last night? His eyes darted. Me? I was on duty. I saw Mr. Grady come in around 11, maybe a little after. He said he was checking on Ruby. He went upstairs. That's useful, I said. Did he come back down? Larkin frowned. Not that I recall. Cal says midnight, I said. You say a little after 11. Larkin swallowed. I know what I saw. Hold on to that, I said. People will try to borrow it. When I crossed back to Wolfe's brownstone, the wind had picked up and the block felt like it was leaning toward a conclusion it hadn't earned. Wolfe was waiting in his chair, eyes half-lidded, listening to the house the way a man listens to a clock. Well, he said. I told him what I'd seen. Mrs. Heller's midnight. The couple's borrowed certainty, the way Cal's version had begun to spread like ink in water. I told him about Larkin, seeing Cal enter the building after 11. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. It's not just a murder being investigated, I said. It's a story being planted. Wolfe nodded once, and his satisfaction was chilly. Yes, the case is being rewritten. I frowned. So what do we do? Tell Detective Wolfe. Wolfe's lips curled slightly. Number not yet. If Cal Grady is writing the story, we will let him write more. The more he writes, the more his ink will reveal its color. He leaned forward a fraction, steepling his fingers. Archie, find Ruby Ma. I live, I asked. Wolfe's eyes stayed steady, preferably. But even if she is not, she is the only person who can contradict Cal Grady's version of the evening, and he knows that. I felt the hairs lift on the back of my neck, not from the wind this time, but from the shape Wolfe's reasoning was taking. Cal Grady wasn't simply helpful, he was editing the truth, and in a murder, the man who edits the truth is usually the one most afraid of it. Chapter 4. The perfect sympathizer's perfect alibi. If Cal Grady ever took up honest work, the city would declare a holiday out of pure astonishment. The trouble with a man like Cal isn't that he lies plenty of people lie. The trouble is the way he lies, smooth, generous, public. He lies the way a priest gives a sermon, with his hands out and his voice warmed, so that if you doubt him you look like the sinner. By noon Wolfe had heard the newest hymn being sung on the block. Mr. Grady was at Rita's diner all night. A woman across the street told me with reverence, as if Cal had stood guard at the gates of the neighborhood. Comforting folks, keeping everyone steady, he heard something terrible happened, and he stayed with us when I carried that upstairs. Wolfe didn't react the way a normal person would react to an alibi offered before anyone asked for one. Wolfe's face stayed blank, but his eyes sharpened like he had just found a burr under his collar. An all-night vigil, he said, in a diner. Apparently it was very moving, I said. Coffee, tears, and community spirit. Wolfe grunted. Community spirit is often a mask for private fear. He stared at the wall a moment, his mind doing what it does, taking a phrase that sounded harmless and turning it until the sharp edges showed. Then, to my surprise, he stood. Now, Nero Wolfe standing up is always an event. It means one of three things. Fritz has announced dinner, Wolfe is going to pace because a thought is chewing at him, or Wolfe is about to do something that will make him angry later. He got his coat. I blinked. You're going out, Wolfe glared at me, as if the observation were insulting. I am going to Rita's diner. You hate diners, I reminded him. I hate lies more, he snapped. And this one has an odor. Fritz appeared in the doorway with the calm of a man watching a storm decide to travel. Shall I prepare the car, sir? Wolfe snorted. We will walk. It is near enough, and my displeasure is sufficient exercise. So we went out. Wolfe lumbering along the sidewalk, like a reluctant ship, and me beside him, making sure traffic didn't take advantage of his lack of interest in it. The block watched us the way it watches anything unusual, quietly and greedily. Rita's diner was the kind of place that tried to be cheerful, and ended up being merely stubborn. The windows were steamed. The sign was bright. The smell inside was coffee and frying, and the sweet sting of cleaning fluid that never quite conquered the grease. Rita herself was behind the counter, thick, armed, sharp-eyed, and built like a woman who had carried too many cases of soda and never forgiven anyone for it. She saw Wolfe enter and did the quick automatic sizing up that all diner owners do. How much trouble? How much money? How long will they sit? Then she recognized him, and her eyes widened. Well, she said, leaning forward, if it isn't him. Wolfe stopped near the counter, not sitting, not relaxing, not giving the place the satisfaction of thinking it had welcomed him. He looked at Rita as if she were a witness stand. Mrs. Rita, Wolfe said. Just Rita, she said. What can I do for you? You can answer questions, Wolfe said. Rita snorted. You're not the police. No, Wolfe agreed. I am worse. I took a booth a few feet away to give Wolfe room, and because my knees prefer something to bend against when Wolfe decides to be monumental, Wolfe said, a man named Cal Grady claims he was here last night. Rita's mouth tightened. Cal? Sure. He's been in and out all day, telling everybody how he's keeping the neighborhood together. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Last night. Rita wiped her hands on a towel that had seen better lives. He came in, yeah. At what time? Wolfe asked. Rita didn't hesitate. Before 11. I glanced at Wolfe. His face didn't change, but his eyes gave a small, satisfied glint. Larkin had said Cal entered the building a little after 11. If Cal was at Rita's before 11, then he had time to do a lot of things in between, including show up where he claimed he wasn't. Wolfe said, how do you recall the time? Rita jerked her chin toward the wall clock. Because he made a show of it. He came in like he was late to a funeral, looked at the clock, sighed loud and said, it's going to be a long night, like anybody asked him. Wolfe's mouth tightened. What did he order? Rita's eyebrows rose. You'll like this, he ordered chamomile tea. I stared. In that diner, chamomile tea was like asking for a violin solo in a subway station. Wolfe stared too, and I could almost hear him thinking, a man building a mood. Rita continued, enjoying herself now. I told him we had it, because I keep it for people who can't drink coffee and still want to feel superior. He asked for honey. Saturday right there by the window and watched the street like he owned it. Wolfe said. Did he mention why he was here? Ritter's face sharpened. He said he heard something terrible happened, that people would be scared, that he was going to be present. Those were his words, like he's a minister. Wolfe's gaze stayed steady. At that moment, did anyone in this diner know Eddie Lane was dead? Ritter blinked. Eddie, who? Wolfe held his stare. Exactly. Ritter leaned forward, suddenly alert in a different way. Wait. This is about the dead guy they found in Ruby's place. Yes, Wolfe said. Rita's eyes narrowed. Then no, nobody knew anything. We had the late crowd truckers, a couple of kids being loud, old Mr. Henley sleeping in his pie. No cops, no gossip, nothing. Cal comes in before any sirens, before anybody's phone starts buzzing, and he's already talking like a tragedy happened. Wolfe's lips pressed together. Did he say Ruby Marr's name? Ritter thought. He said Ruby was a good soul, like he'd rehearsed it. Then he asked me something. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. What? Ritter's mouth twisted into a half-smile that had no warmth. He asked if the back alley camera still worked. That hit the booth like a dropped plate. I leaned forward. Back alley camera. Rita jerked her head toward the back. We got a little camera out there, pointing at the alley door and the trash bins. Had some punk stealing deliveries last year. My nephew put it up. Cal asked if it still recorded, and if it was pointed right. Wolfe's face didn't change, but the air around him did. He was pleased, and when Wolfe is pleased in a diner, somebody else is in trouble. What did you tell him? Wolfe asked. I told him it worked fine, Rita said. Which is mostly true. It works when it feels like it. I didn't tell him that. I asked him why he cared, he said. Just making sure it's all covered, for safety. Wolfe nodded slowly. Did he go to the back? Ritter snorted. He asked to use the bathroom. The bathroom's back there. He took his sweet time. And when he returned? Wolfe asked. He ordered another chamomile, Rita said, as if it still amused her. Then he started talking to people, not really listening, just guiding like, you heard something at midnight, right? Or you saw someone run, didn't you? Stuff like that. I felt my jaw tighten. It matched what I'd seen upstairs. Cal feeding people their own memories, pre-chewed, Wolfe said. What time did he leave? Ritter shrugged. Around 1:30, maybe later. He made a point of telling me he was going to check on Ruby. Then he said, if anyone asks, I was here, like I'm his secretary. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. And did you agree? Ritter's smile turned sharp. I said, if anyone asks, I'll tell them exactly what happened. Cal didn't like that. He patted my hand like I was a child and said, good girl. I whistled softly. He really is allergic to subtlety. Ritter looked at me. So what's he done, Archie? Because if you're both here, she nodded at Wolfe. It's not because he skipped out on paying his tab, Wolfe said. He is constructing an alibi. Ritter frowned. Sounds smart. Wolfe's mouth curled, thin and dry. A liar does not build an alibi. He builds a stage. Ritter stared at him a moment, then gave a slow nod like a woman watching a familiar kind of trouble take a new shape. Wolfe turned to go, refusing the diner the courtesy of sitting down or ordering anything. At the door, he paused and looked back. Ritter, he said. Yeah, if you have access to that camera recording, Wolfe said, do not give it to Cal Grady. If the police ask, comply. If Cal asks, refuse. Rita's eyes hardened. He asks again, I'll refuse with a frying pan. Wolfe nodded once, satisfied. Outside, the wind hit us again, and the block felt even more crowded with its own opinions. Wolfe walked back toward the brownstone without hurry, but there was a new energy in him, the quiet satisfaction of a man who has just seen a lie leave fingerprints. I matched his stride. So Cal's perfect alibi is that he was at Rita's before anyone knew Eddie was dead, drinking chamomile tea, checking on a camera. Wolfe grunted. He came early to claim later. That's not an alibi, I said. No, Wolfe agreed. It is a rehearsal. We reached the stoop. Wolfe climbed it with the dignity of a man returning to his proper kingdom. At the door he stopped, turned his head slightly, and said it as if he were commenting on the weather. A man who asks about a camera is not seeking safety, Archie. He is seeking ignorance. Then he went inside, already arranging Cal Grady's stage pieces in his mind, so that, when the curtain finally rose in Wolfe's office, there would be nowhere left for Cal to stand without being seen. Chapter 5. A ring, a debt, a thread. By the second day the block had decided it understood everything, which is the way a neighborhood protects itself from thinking. People hate uncertainty the way Wolfe hates canned soup. So they took Cal Grady's story, midnight, thump, shadow, poor Ruby, and repeated it until it sounded like memory. Wolfe didn't repeat anything. He collected. The morning mail brought 2 bills, one crank letter addressed to Mr. Wolfe, and a note from Inspector Kramer requesting a conversation in the tone of a man who already regretted it. Wolfe read Kramer's note, grunted, and handed it to me like a damp napkin. Archie, he said, you will go to the police. I stared. I will. You will, Wolfe said. I will not expose myself to the air outside. Air is part of the city, I reminded him. It is an unfortunate part, Wolfe replied. Go. So I went to Midtown North and sat across from a detective who looked like she hadn't slept since Disco died. Detective Nero Wolfe came in while I was still admiring the station's ability to make fluorescent light feel like a punishment. She didn't offer coffee. She didn't offer a smile. She offered a file. Eddie Lane, she said, dropping it on the table. Your man likes to solve things. Here's what we've got so far. Official time of death holds. Cause is blunt force trauma, likely followed by staging. No fingerprints worth keeping, no forced entry, and no Ruby Ma. We also have a report of a body seen briefly in the alley behind Rita's before it was moved. Thank you, I said. You're being almost friendly. Don't get used to it, she said. I'm being strategic. She opened the file, tapped a photo with her pen, a close-up of Eddie Lane's right hand. Bear, you're still on the ring, I said. The ring matters, she said, because it wasn't taken as an afterthought. The skin shows a mark. It came off soon after death. I leaned in. The finger had a pale band where the ring had been, like a small, honest witness. So someone knew it was important. Yes, she said. Then she added, we check pawn shops within a mile. I raised my eyebrows. Already. We're police, she said dryly. We do some things quickly. She slid a small slip of paper across the table. This was recovered from Harlow Pawn's counter area after the disturbance. A pawn ticket, dated last night. I picked it up. It was wrinkled, the kind of cheap paper that absorbs oil from a hand. The timestamp was clear enough, about 2 hours after Eddie's estimated time of death. I felt my stomach tighten. That's fast. That's a person who either panicked or planned, she said. The pawn shop clerk says someone tried to pawn a ring but didn't complete the sale. Got spooked and left. The ticket was left behind on the counter in the scuffle. Convenient, I said. Or careless, she replied. Either way, it's real. I nodded slowly. Can I take this to Wolfe? No, she said, and held out her hand. I gave it back. She put it away as if locking it in a drawer in her mind. What about the ring itself? I asked. We don't have it, she said. But we have something else. Security footage stills from Harlow's camera. She turned another page and showed me a photo of the inside of a ring band, magnified crisp. Inside the metal was a tiny etching. Not a name, not a date, a mark, a simple pattern of short lines and a dot like a minimalist tally. What am I looking at? I asked. A code mark, she said. Local crew uses it to identify property moved through certain stash apartments. I blinked. You mean a ring can be a label? It can be a key, she said. It can be a warning. It can be proof. You know which crew? I asked. She nodded once. Brickline. That name landed with a dull weight. You don't need to be a cop to know that some street names are chosen because they sound tough, and others because they mean something. Brickline sounded like both, I said. So Eddie wasn't just moving packages. No, she said. He was moving information. He was a courier for more than paper. I leaned back, and Ruby Ma. Detective Wolfe's expression didn't change, but her voice hardened slightly. Either Ruby is a victim, or Ruby is part of Brickline's structure, or Ruby is a loose end someone decided to tie off. I exhaled. That's cheerful. I don't do cheerful, she said. Tell Nero Wolfe, if he gets in my way, I will arrest him personally. I'll pass on the sentiment, I said. He thrives on sentiment. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was in his chair like he had never moved and never intended to. Fritz brought me a sandwich that tasted like a man trying to keep me alive while I ran around with murder. I briefed Wolfe on the essentials: time, trauma, pawn ticket, and the rings inside Mark. When I said, Brickline, Wolfe's eyes narrowed the way they do when a word fits into a pattern he has been building without telling me. Brickline, he murmured. A crude name for a crude enterprise. Detective Wolfe says it's a stash house crew, I said. And Eddie's ring had their mark inside, like a label. Not a label, Wolfe corrected, a credential. A man who wears it is either trusted or trapped. I took a sip of coffee. The ring also became a target. Someone tried to pawn it 2 hours after Eddie died. Wolfe stared at the wall, thinking, a pawn attempt so soon suggests urgency. Either the ring is valuable, or the person needed it gone, or needed money fast, I offered. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Everyone needs money. Few need it with such haste. The doorbell rang. I went to answer, and there was Cal Grady on the stoop again, freshly shaved, wearing grief like a clean shirt. He held a paper bag. No coffee this time, probably because Wolfe had insulted his last offering by existing. Archie, he said softly, like we were old friends. I just want to help. You keep saying that, I told him. It's starting to sound like a threat. He smiled, wounded. Come on, I heard things. People are talking about gangs now. That's dangerous. We need to keep this quiet. I let him in because Wolfe had already decided. Cal was a faucet he intended to leave running until it flooded. Cal stepped into the office and stopped short when he saw Wolfe's eyes on him. Wolfe's gaze was steady and impersonal, which is the worst kind when you're trying to charm. Mr. Grady, Wolfe said, you persist. I care, Cal said quickly. He sat down without being invited, which with Cal meant he thought the chair belonged to his role. Archie told me you're looking into Eddie Lane. Eddie, he was a kid, really. Not bad, just scared. Wolfe said nothing. Cal leaned forward, lowering his voice. Eddie always wore that ring when he was scared. There it was, a sentence dressed up as empathy, but wearing knowledge underneath. I felt my eyes flick to Wolfe, but Wolfe didn't move. He didn't blink. He simply filed it away, the way he filed away the time Cal insisted on and the details he shouldn't have had. Wolfe said mildly, You noticed his habits closely. Cal spread his hands. I notice people. That's how I help. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. And you know the ring is missing. Cal froze for the smallest moment, just enough to confirm he realized too late what he had said. Then he recovered, too fast. Everybody knows, he said louder. Do they? Wolfe asked. Cal's smile came back, bright and false. Word spreads. You should see the lobby. It's like a wake. Wolfe nodded slowly. Indeed, tell me, Mr. Grady. What is Brickline? Cal's eyes widened a fraction. He stared at Wolfe as if Wolfe had produced the question from thin air. Brickline, Cal repeated. Why would I? Wolfe's gaze stayed on him. Because you know it. Cal laughed. It came out wrong. Come on, I'm a neighborhood guy. I don't run with those people, Wolfe said. Then stop trying to steer this conversation. You are not competent. Cal's face flushed. Anger flickered under the grief, quick and hot. Then he stood abruptly. Fine, he snapped. Do it your way, but if you make the wrong people angry, don't blame me. I'm the one keeping this block safe. He left with his bag, his dignity, and his performance all slightly dented. When the door shut, Wolfe turned to me. That remark about the ring, he said. Yeah, I said. Eddie wore it when he was scared. Wolfe's lips thinned. A man does not casually know another man's talisman unless he has observed it frequently, or has been told about it by someone who had reason to tell him. So Cal either knew Eddie, I said, or knew someone who knew Eddie. Wolfe nodded. And the pawn attempt 2 hours after death suggests the ring moved quickly from the scene. I frowned. Meaning the thief didn't take it home and think it over. They ran straight to a pawn shop. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Yes, which means the thief feared being found with it. I leaned back, letting it settle. A marked ring. A crew that uses marks. A pawn attempt too soon. Cal's empathy spilling facts. A ring, a debt, a thread, I said. Wolfe looked at me, and his thin smile showed for a moment, cold and pleased. Precisely, he said. Now we pull. Chapter 6, The Pawn Shop Riddle. New York has 1,000 kinds of storefronts that look like they were born tired, and pawn shops are the ones that never pretend otherwise. They sit there with barred windows and faded signs, offering cash for whatever part of your dignity you can reach into your pocket and hand over. Harlow Pawn was on a side street that smelled like old metal and newer regret. The sign above the door promised loans in red paint that had seen better decades. Inside, the air was stale and overwarmed, full of that particular odor of brass, cloth, and human desperation handled too often. Wolfe had not accompanied me, of course. Wolfe did not cross town to look at second-hand jewelry any more than he would cross the street to taste canned soup. He had sent me with instructions and a look that said failure would be treated as a personal insult. Learn, he had said. Do not chatter, and observe who is frightened. So I did. Behind the counter was a man in his late 40s, with thin hair and a face built from suspicion. His name, according to the small tag on his shirt, was Harlow, which meant either he owned the place or he had been here so long he'd become part of the inventory. He looked at me like I might be a cop. I gave him my most harmless grin. I'm looking for a ring. I said, men's gold worn. His eyes narrowed. We got rings. This one's been in a hurry, I said. Come in last night. There was some excitement. His gaze sharpened. Who are you? Name's Archie Goodwin, I said. I work for a man who likes his facts clean. That didn't relax him, but it shifted his suspicion from cop to trouble, which in a pawn shop is a normal adjustment. He leaned back slightly. That ring ain't for sale. I didn't ask if it was for sale, I said. I asked if it exists. His lips pressed together. It exists. It came in. It didn't stay. I blinked. It didn't stay. He shook his head once tight. Brought in by a girl. I made out the ticket. Started the paperwork, and then, he snorted. Then Mr. Perfect showed up. Mr. Perfect, I said. Harlow's eyes flicked up and down me, measuring whether I could handle the name. Too polite, too clean, too sad, like he was auditioning for a funeral. My stomach tightened pleasantly. Cal Grady. Harlow made a face like he had tasted bad milk. That's him, Cal. I don't forget that kind. He pawned the ring, I asked. Harlow let out a short laugh. He didn't pawn anything. He came in like he owned the place and started talking soft, like he was comforting me, said a young man died. Said it was a tragedy, said the neighborhood was hurting. Then he says, I'm here to take care of something delicate. And the delicate thing was the ring, I said. Harlow nodded. He didn't want the pawn. He wanted to buy it back. I frowned. Buy it back from the girl. Yeah, Harlow said. Only it wasn't his ring to buy back. That's what made it interesting. Who was the girl? I asked. Harlow's mouth tightened again. Name on the ticket was Tess Rook. She's been in here before. Not a regular, but... He shrugged. You see enough faces, you learn which ones are running from something. What did Cal say to her? I asked. Harlow's eyes slid toward the back of the shop, as if the conversation had left a stain. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He did that thing where he talks like he's your friend, and you're already agreeing. Tess, sweetheart, you don't want to be mixed up in this. Let me handle it. Give it here. I'll make it right. And she did. I asked. Harlow rubbed his jaw. Not at first. She said she needed the money. He said he'd pay more than the pawn. He pulled out cash, neat bills. Too neat for a man who claims he's just comforting folks at a diner. That's Cal, I murmured. Harlow leaned forward. Here's the part you might like. He kept glancing at my camera. I lifted my eyebrows. You have one? Yeah, he said, over the register dummy, looking, but it works. He noticed it, asked me if it recorded sound. I felt the back of my neck prickle. Did it? It records video, Harlow said. No sound. I told him that. He smiled like he didn't believe me. And Tess? I asked. Harlow exhaled. She got spooked. Not by me. By him. She wasn't looking at his face. She was looking past him, like she was seeing somebody else standing there. She said, Fine, take it. Then she snatched the ticket off the counter and ran out like the devil had asked for change. So Cal bought it back, I said. Harlow's eyes sharpened. He tried. He put the money down, he reached for the ring, and then he stopped, like he remembered something. What? I asked. Harlow's mouth curled. He says, Actually, no, I don't want to touch it. Just give it to her. Tell her I offered. I stared. He didn't want to touch the ring. Exactly, Harlow said. Like it burned, like he was afraid of being seen with it. Did you give it to her? I asked. Harlow shrugged. I wasn't about to keep a hot ring around. I called Tess back. She was still on the sidewalk, pacing like she might bolt. I handed it to her. She took it like it was a snake, and she shoved it in her pocket and went. Where'd Cal go? I asked. Harlow's eyes narrowed. Out, fast. No more sad talk. No more polite. Just gone. I let the pieces shift in my mind. Cal Grady, Mr. Neighborhood, didn't pawn Eddie's ring. He tried to retrieve it. He offered money. He avoided touching it. He worried about cameras. He worried about being seen, not about being kind. That wasn't sympathy. That was containment. Do you know where Tess Rook is? I asked. Harlow snorted. If I knew that, I'd be in a different business. But she hangs around West 35th, near the alley behind Rita's sometimes. That was enough. I thanked him, slid a bill across the counter for his troubles, and left before he could decide he regretted talking. Outside, the wind hit hard, and the city looked like it was pretending nothing had happened, which is the city's favorite performance. I headed back toward our block, toward the alley behind Rita's diner, where the trash bins sat like witnesses that never get asked. I found Tess Rook near the mouth of the alley, half in shadow, half in the grey light that makes everything look guilty. She was in her 20s, thin, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that had learned to measure danger fast. Her jacket was too light for the weather. Her hands kept moving, touching her hair, her collar, her pockets, as if checking that she still owned herself. I didn't rush her. You don't rush fear. You let it show you where the sharp edges are. Tess, I said. Her head snapped toward me, and her eyes went wide. For a second she looked ready to run. Then she decided I wasn't the immediate threat. Who are you? She demanded. Archie Goodwin, I said. I work for Nero Wolfe. That name landed. It always does, if the person has heard it. Tess's mouth tightened. I don't know anything, she said quickly. I didn't ask yet, I replied, but you already answered. She swallowed. I didn't do anything to Eddie. I'm not accusing you, I said. I'm asking about a ring. Her eyes flicked. Down. then away. She hugged herself tighter. I found it, she said. Near the alley, I supplied. She glared. Yeah, near the alley. Is that illegal now? It depends what else was near the alley, I said. Like Eddie Lane. Her face tightened. I didn't see him. But you found his ring, I said, with his mark inside. Her breathing changed, faster, shallower. She wasn't just afraid of me. She was afraid of what I might make her say out loud. You, Tess, I said, softer. Why did you bring it to Harlow Pawn? Her jaw clenched. I needed money. And Cal Grady showed up, I said. Her eyes flashed. He didn't do anything. He didn't have to, I said. He just talked at you until you did what he wanted. She shook her head hard. Number he offered to help. Help the way a lockpick helps a door, I said. Her gaze snapped to mine, and for a moment I saw it, pure, naked fear, with something underneath it like shame. Did Cal tell you to say you found it near the alley? I asked. Her lips parted, then closed. Her eyes flicked toward the street, toward the corner, toward any place where the person giving orders might suddenly appear. That's a yes, I said. She whispered. I didn't have a choice. Everybody has a choice, I said. Sometimes the choices are just lousy. Her shoulders sagged a fraction. He said Eddie owed people. He owed Brickline, I said. She flinched like I had struck her. Don't say that name. All right, I said. Then tell me whose instructions you're following. She shook her head, frantic. I can't. You can, I said. Because if Cal Grady is arranging witnesses, he's arranging victims too. That got through. Her eyes filled, not with tears, but with that bright, furious helplessness that comes when a person realizes they've been used. I didn't find it, she said, voice shaking. Somebody gave it to me, told me to take it to Harlow, told me to get cash. Then Cal shows up like he's been waiting. And when it went sideways, the ticket got left on the counter. Who gave it to you? I asked. She swallowed hard. A guy, I don't know his name. He hangs around the building sometimes. Skinny, hood. He said Eddie was dead and I should do the smart thing. My stomach tightened. He told you Eddie was dead. She stared at me, realizing what she had admitted. Her face went pale. I nodded slowly. And Cal told you what to say. She whispered, I'm not a bad person. I know, I said. Bad people aren't usually this scared. Her eyes darted again toward the street. The fear had a shape now, someone else's shadow, someone else's plan on the street. Fear has a scent, and it doesn't smell like guilt. It smells like instructions. I let a beat of silence sit, then said, Come with me. Her head jerked back. Where? Someplace warm, I said, and someplace with a man who listens better than the police and thinks faster than Cal Grady. Her eyes narrowed. Nero Wolfe. That's the one, I said. And Tess, if you've been handed a ring and a script, you're part of the story, whether you like it or not. The only way out is to stop reading your lines. She hesitated, just long enough for her fear to argue with her need, and then she nodded once. Sharp. All right, she said. But if anything happens, I'll be right beside you, I told her. And if anything happens to me, Wolfe will be furious, and you don't want a furious Wolfe aimed in your direction. She almost smiled, almost, then pulled her jacket tighter. The ring's not on me, she added quickly. I ditched it. Safe. I can get it. Then she walked with me out of the alley, away from the trash bins, away from the stage Cal Grady had been building, and toward the brownstone where Nero Wolfe sat waiting to turn fear into facts. Chapter 7. Tess cracks like thin ice if you've never brought a frightened young woman into Nero Wolfe's office. You've missed a small lesson in human geometry. People who are scared try to sit where they can see the door, the windows, and the hallway at once. They try to make their bodies smaller without meaning to, as if shrinking could dodge consequences. They keep their hands busy because still hands feel like surrender. Tess Rook did all of that. She sat on the edge of the yellow chair, knees together, shoulders hunched inside a jacket that looked borrowed from a better day. Her eyes kept flicking to the front window, and every time a car went by outside, she flinched, like the sound had her name in it. Wolfe studied her, the way he studied a rare orchid that might bloom or might die out of spite. He didn't soften his expression. Wolfe doesn't do soft. Wolfe does inevitable. "Miss Rook," he said, "you are here because you are frightened." Tess's chin lifted a fraction. "I didn't do anything." "That is not a denial," Wolfe said. "It is a plea." I leaned against my desk, keeping quiet. Wolfe had told me privately to keep Tess away from brick-line eyes, and he had done it his way, by making the brownstone a small fortress. Fritz had admitted Tess through the side door. Curtains were drawn in the front room, and Wolfe had instructed Theodore Horstman, his orchid man, to stay upstairs and not ask questions even if he heard screaming. It was almost cozy. Wolfe went on. "You will speak honestly, and you will be safer than you are now. If you insist on lying, you will be used again. You are tired of being used." Tess swallowed. Her eyes slid to me. He said the cops would pin it on me. Wolfe's voice remained calm. "Who is?" She hesitated. Wolfe didn't pounce. He waited. Silence in Wolfe's office is not emptiness. It is pressure, applied politely. "Cal," she whispered. "Cal Grady." Wolfe nodded once, as if ticking a box. "Of course. Archie informs me Mr. Grady's compassion is aggressive." Tess's mouth tightened. "He acts like he owns the block." "He wishes to," Wolfe said. "Now, tell me what happened." Tess drew a shaky breath and began the way frightened people always begin, at the safe edge of the truth. "I knew Eddie," she said. "Not like everybody thinks. We weren't a couple. Not really. Sometimes he showed up. Sometimes he disappeared. He'd say he was getting his life straight, then he'd get it crooked again." Wolfe's eyes stayed on her. "Eddie Lane was a courier." Tess flinched. "Yeah, and he wore a ring," Wolfe said, "a ring that mattered." Her fingers tightened in her lap. "He always wore it." "Always," Wolfe repeated. "Yet you told Mr. Goodwin you found it near an alley." Atis's face went pale. "I..." Wolfe held up a hand. "Do not defend. Explain." Tess's eyes darted toward the window again. She whispered. "They watch. They're always around." "Not here," Wolfe said. She stared at him, and I could see the fight in her. Fear arguing with the tiny relief of being believed. Wolfe said, "Archie, take Miss Rook to the dining room." I blinked. "Now?" "Now," Wolfe said. "We will speak there." Tess's head snapped up. "Why?" Wolfe's gaze stayed steady. "Because if you are being watched, the watchers will expect you in my office. They will not expect you elsewhere in my house." That was Wolfe's version of a reassurance, a tactical decision delivered like a verdict. So I escorted Tess to the dining room, and Fritz, who could smell tension the way a bloodhound smells supper, had already put a pot of hot tea on the sideboard. The tea wasn't chamomile. Fritz had too much pride. Wolfe came in, sat at the head of the table with the same authority he had in his red leather chair, and began again without wasting time on pleasantries. "Miss Rook," he said, "when did Cal Grady first speak to you about Eddie Lane?" Tess's lips trembled. She looked at the tea, then at her hands. "Before," she said. Wolfe's eyebrows rose slightly. "Before what?" Before Eddie was dead," she whispered. The sentence fell into the room like a stone. I felt my stomach tighten, not because it surprised me, but because it made the shape of the case sharper. Wolfe didn't move. He simply watched her. "Continue," he said. Tess swallowed. "It was last night. The night it happened. I was near the diner. I go there sometimes because it's warm and they don't throw you out if you buy one coffee and sit too long. Cal came up to me like he'd been looking for me." Wolfe's voice stayed even. "What time?" Tess shook her head quickly. "I don't know, late. Not midnight, earlier." "Earlier than 11:42, Wolfe said. She stared at him. "What?" Wolfe's gaze didn't change. "The police estimate Eddie Lane's time of death at 11:42. If Cal approached you before then, he approached you before the death. Tess's face tightened with fear. He said Eddie was in trouble. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Those words. Yes, Tess said. He said, Eddie's in trouble. Tess, real trouble. You don't want to be mixed up in it. Like he cared, like he was warning me. Then, he said I could help. How? Wolfe asked. He told me to check the alley behind the diner. Tess said, voice shaking. He said, go look back there. Make sure nothing's left. Make sure there's nothing that could hurt Eddie. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Nothing left. Nothing that could hurt Eddie. Conveniently vague. Tess nodded miserably. He made it sound like Eddie got jumped, or he dropped something, or I don't know. Cal talks like he's doing you a favor even when he's giving you orders. I said quietly, did he say why you and not someone else? Chess's eyes flicked to me. He said, Eddie trusted me, that Eddie would listen to me. He said if I helped, it would keep Eddie safe. Wolfe's voice was soft now, but it carried. And you obeyed. Tess's shoulders slumped. Yeah, I went. I didn't want Eddie in trouble. I didn't want those people angry at him, or at me, so I went into the alley. And, Wolfe said, her throat worked. I didn't find anything at first. Just trash, boxes, rats. Then I saw him. Eddie, Wolfe said. She nodded hard, eyes bright. He was down, kind of crumpled, not like he fell. Like he got put there, and later, after I ran, somebody moved him. I thought he was dead. I panicked. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. You approached the body. Yes, Tess whispered. I touched him. I shouldn't have. His skin was cold, and, she swallowed. And his hand was, wrong, like something was missing. The ring, Wolfe said. Tess nodded again. The ring. It wasn't there, but the mark, on his finger, like he'd just had it. I looked around, and it was there, near him, like it had slipped off, or like someone dropped it. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. You picked it up. Tess's voice cracked. I didn't think. I just grabbed it. I thought if I left it there, someone would see me. Or, I don't know. I just grabbed it and ran. And then, Wolfe said, you went to the pawn shop. Tess flinched. Not right away. I hid. I sat on a stoop shaking like an idiot. I kept thinking Cal would come back and see me. I kept thinking somebody else would come. Then I thought, if I have it, it's trouble. If I don't have it, it's money. So I took it to Harlow. Wolfe's voice remained calm, and Cal Grady arrived. Tess's face twisted, like he was waiting, like he knew exactly where I'd go. He came in all sad and gentle, saying he was taking care of things for Eddie, like Eddie was his nephew, or something. He tried to get it from me without making a scene. Wolfe's eyes held hers. He attempted to retrieve it quietly, acting like a hero cleaning up heartbreak. Tess nodded, tears finally spilling. Yes, that's exactly what he does. He makes you feel like you're lucky. He's helping you. I watched Wolfe's face. He didn't look pleased. He looked focused, like the last piece of a puzzle had clicked into place and he could now see the picture underneath. He said, Miss Rook, when Cal Grady told you to check the alley, did you hear sirens? Tess shook her head. Numbered. Did you hear shouting? Wolfe asked. No, she said again. Nothing. Wolfe nodded slowly. Then Cal Grady directed you to a place where a body would later be discovered, before it could reasonably be known that the body would exist. Tess stared at him, horrified. So he knew Eddie would be found, or moved. Wolfe's voice dropped, quiet and exact. That is the riddle. I leaned forward slightly. Tess, did Cal say anything else? Anything specific? A time? A name? Anything that felt planted? She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. He said, do it now, he said. before it gets worse. And he kept saying, "You don't want to be caught near this." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Caught near this, not caught near Eddie, not caught near trouble, caught near this. Tess's breath hitched. "I didn't." "I know," Wolfe said, and that was as close as he came to kindness. "You have given us what we require." He stood, and the chair legs whispered against the floor. He looked down at Tess with that chilly calm that makes liars sweat. "Miss Rook," he said, "you will remain here for now. Archie will see to your comfort and your safety." Tess blinked. Safety from who? Wolfe's eyes went distant, already turning the next gears. From anyone who benefits when you remain afraid. He turned toward the doorway, then paused, and spoke the question that had been sharpening in his mind since Cal Grady first said, "Midnight," too confidently. "Archie," Wolfe said, "consider it carefully." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize it. He simply let the logic speak. "Who sends someone to a body?" Wolfe asked, "before the body exists?" Chapter 8, The Camouflage of Kindness. If Cal Grady had been born in a different century, he would have been the kind of man who stood on docks during storms pointing heroically at the sea right after loosening a few ropes. Wolfe didn't say that, of course. Wolfe rarely wastes a sentence on decoration when the bones will do. What he said, after Tess had been settled upstairs with Fritz, hovering like a polite fortress, was this: "Archie, Mr. Grady is not merely interfering. He is habituated." "Habituated to what?" I asked. "To arriving first," Wolfe replied. "To controlling the first account, to monopolizing the language of sympathy." "That's a hobby," I said. "Half the city does it on social media." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "This is not vanity, it is technique. Go learn his history." So I did what I always do when Wolfe tells me to learn. I walked out into New York with a notepad, a good coat, and the attitude of a man who belongs wherever people keep their records. Cal Grady's building offered plenty of eager mouths, but mouths are unreliable. They chew facts into mush and call it truth. I started with paper instead. The clerk at the courthouse, small, tired, and protected by glass, gave me the look that says, "I hate your curiosity." But he gave me what I needed when I used the right words and the right tone. Cal had been involved in a couple of civil matters, a landlord dispute, a community association complaint that sounded noble until you read the details and realized it was about control of a basement storage room. Then I went to a private library with newspaper archives and spent an hour learning the special pleasure of old ink. Cal Grady's name appeared often enough to become familiar, not as a criminal, not as a victim, as a presence. 3 years ago, an apartment fire on West 36th. 2 residents injured, 1 cat saved, and there was Cal in the little photo, coat open, arm around a sobbing woman, talking to a reporter. The caption quoted him, "We're a family on this block. 18 months ago, a young man found unconscious from an overdose on a nearby stoop. Paramedics revived him." The article mentioned local organizer Cal Grady had called it in and stayed with the boy's mother. 9 months ago, a woman reported missing for 2 days, found later, disoriented, in a friend's apartment across town. The brief item said neighbors credited Cal Grady block committee member for keeping the community informed and calm. There were more: a mugging, a burst pipe that displaced 3 tenants, a sudden eviction. It wasn't that Cal caused these things, at least not by anything you could prove, with a finger pointed and a badge waved. It was that he orbited them with uncanny reliability. Tragedies moved through the neighborhood like bad weather. Cal showed up like a porch light. By late afternoon, I had enough to make my skin itch. I headed back to the brownstone and found Wolfe in his office with his eyes half lidded, listening to me the way he listens to music when he doesn't approve of the composer but respects the structure. I laid it out. The fire, the overdose, the missing woman, the little quotes, the photos, always first, always holding someone, always supplying the words everyone would repeat. "A moth to a porch light," I finished. Wolfe's mouth tightened. "You think he invites trouble?" I said. I think he profits from disorder, Wolfe replied. Not in blood, in influence. The phone rang then. Our private line, I answered, and Inspector Kramer's voice came through like gravel being poured into a bucket. Goodwin, he growled. Your fat genius sticking his nose into my case. He's sitting in his chair, I said. His nose remains attached. Kramer snorted. Listen, we got something on Eddie Lane. Your friend, the lady detective, didn't tell you. Detective Wolfe tells me things when she feels like it, I said. That's her hobby. Eddie was trying to sell, Kramer said. Not drugs, information, a ledger, names, payoffs. I went still. Payoffs to who? To anybody with a uniform or a key, Kramer said sourly. Sanitation. Building inspectors, maybe worse. Brickline uses stash apartments, and somebody's been keeping track. Eddie had his hands on it. Wolfe's eyes opened fully. He hadn't heard Kramer's words, but he could read my face, the way he reads a menu. I said to Kramer, Where's the ledger now? That's what we'd like to know, Kramer snapped. Eddie's pockets didn't have it. His bag didn't have it. Ruby Mar's apartment doesn't have it, which means somebody grabbed it. I glanced at Wolfe. His gaze was steady, expectant. Kramer, I said. Who knew Eddie was selling? Too many, Kramer said. He talked. Or somebody talked for him, streets buzzing. Any name? I asked, pushing. Kramer hesitated, just long enough to make it useful. There's talk Eddie met someone near Rita's diner. Talk says he was scared. My mouth felt dry. Scared enough to wear his ring. You tell your boss to stop snooping, Kramer said. And you tell him if he gets in my way, you'll do something loud, I said, and hung up before he could enjoy himself. Wolfe looked at me. Proceed. Eddie was about to sell a ledger, I said. Names, payoffs. Brickline's list of who gets paid to look away. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. And the ledger is missing. Which is why Eddie is dead, I said. Wolfe's lips compressed. Not necessarily. Eddie might have been killed for the attempt to sell, or killed because he had already sold, or killed because the ledger threatened someone not of Brickline but of legitimacy. I exhaled. And Cal Grady. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Cal Grady does not strike me as a man with an appetite for violence. He strikes me as a man with an appetite for arrangement. Control, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. He arrives with tissues and soup, not because he cares, but because sympathy grants access. People confess to kindness. They do not confess to suspicion. That clicked into place with the clippings I'd read, the quotes. The arm around the shoulder, the warm voice, the way Cal steered what people remembered. I've seen that, I said. He doesn't just comfort. He collects. He pockets details. Wolfe nodded once, like coins. I leaned forward, so when Eddie started trying to sell the ledger, Cal's care wasn't compassion. Wolfe's thin smile appeared, brief, sharp, and humorless. It was damage control in a friendly mask. I sat back, letting the picture form. Eddie, scared, in trouble. Cal approaching Tess early, sending her to the alley before death. Cal showing up at Rita's before anyone knew anything, asking about cameras. Cal appearing at the pawn shop to retrieve the ring without touching it, as if the ring were proof that could burn. Cal isn't the butcher, I said slowly. He's the stage manager. Wolfe's eyes held mine. A useful distinction. The stage manager may not kill, but he knows who will and when. I frowned. So what do we do now? We can't arrest him. We don't even have the ring. Wolfe leaned back, steepling his fingers, satisfaction returning in the form of method. We do what we always do, he said. We remove his camouflage. Meaning, I asked. Wolfe's gaze drifted toward the front window, toward the street, where Cal's version of events was spreading like a warm rumor. We will force him, Wolfe said, to be kind in the wrong direction. I blinked. That's one of your riddles. It is a practical one, Wolfe replied. If Cal Grady's power is in controlling the story, then we will alter the story. We will present him with a development he cannot resist correcting. I stared at him. You're going to bait him. Wolfe's smile stayed thin. Archie, a man who feeds on control cannot endure a situation he does not control. We will offer him one. Outside, a car horn blared, and the block sounded ordinary for a moment. Ordinary the way a stage is ordinary when the curtain is down. Wolfe's voice turned firm. Go to Detective Wolfe. Tell her this. Eddie Lane was selling a ledger. Tell her nothing more than that. We know it and that Cal Grady knows it. Observe her reaction. Then return. I stood. She's going to love me. Her affection is irrelevant, Wolfe said. Go. As I reached for my coat, Wolfe added, almost casually. And Archie, remember. Yeah. Cal Grady's kindness is camouflage, Wolfe said. Camouflage fails when the creature moves. I went out into the city, thinking about moths and porch lights, about a ledger full of payoffs, and about a man whose sympathy wasn't a virtue but a tool. Some men kill with a gun. Cal Grady killed with a smile, by making sure the mess went where he wanted it, and nowhere else. Chapter 9, The Trap in Plain Sight. Wolfe does not like rumors. They are sloppy, contagious, and usually attached to mouths he wouldn't trust to recite the alphabet. But Wolfe will use a rumor the way a surgeon uses a scalpel, cleanly, for one cut, and only when the patient won't survive any other way. He had the whole thing arranged before I finished telling him what Detective Wolfe had not said at Midtown North. We will give Mr. Grady something he cannot resist, Wolfe said, steepling his fingers. A development that threatens his control and tempts his vanity. Vanity? I asked. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. His addiction is not to violence. It is to managing consequences. If Eddie Lane's ledger exists in duplicate, then Eddie Lane's death did not resolve the danger. Mr. Grady will move to resolve it, I said. We don't actually have a duplicate. No, Wolfe agreed. Therefore, we will invent one. I stared at him. You want me to spread a fake rumor? I want you, Wolfe corrected, to plant a seed in soil already prepared for panic. He took a sheet of paper from his desk, wrote 4 short lines with a blunt pencil, and slid it toward me. Read it, he said. I read it. It was simple. Too simple. No names, no drama, just the kind of tight, specific information that makes street gossip feel like intelligence. Eddie Lane had copied the ledger. Eddie trusted only one hiding place, and the copy was tucked under the loose step at Rita's diner. He looked up. Loose step. Rita complained to Fritz last week that her front step rocks. Fritz replied that a proper establishment would repair it. Rita replied that a proper cook would mind his own kitchen. I grinned. So the step is real. The step is real, Wolfe said. The ledger is not. And Cal will go looking, I said. Wolfe's eyes held mine. If Mr. Grady is what we believe, he will not be able to permit even the possibility of a copy surviving. All right, I said. How do we get the rumor to him? Wolfe's gaze shifted to the phone. We do not deliver it to him. We allow him to catch it. That was Wolfe's favorite kind of trap, one where the victim believes he stumbled into it on his own. Within an hour, I had done my part. I didn't broadcast. I didn't blab to a crowd. I nudged it into 3 places where it would travel fast and arrive unchanged. Rita's, the building doorman, and a woman on the block who knew everybody's business and took pride in the speed of her circulation. At Rita's diner, I ordered coffee and let Rita lean in like she was about to hear the day's sermon. You hear anything new? She asked. I heard something, I said, low enough to make it feel valuable. Eddie had a ledger with names. He copied it, and he hid the copy somewhere he could reach quick. Rita's eyes hardened. That's going to get somebody killed. Somebody already did, I said. The copy's supposed to be under that loose step out front. Rita stared a beat, then snorted. Under the step. That's the dumbest. It's the kind of dumb that works, I said, because no one believes it. Rita's mouth tightened, and I could see her mind doing what it always did, counting risks, weighing trouble. You didn't hear this from the police. No, I said, and you didn't hear it from me. She nodded once. You got it. Then I went across the street and spoke to Larkin the doorman in the tone of a man passing on concern, not information. Larkin had the eager fear of someone who wants to be helpful but doesn't want to get crushed by it. A copy, he whispered, when I mentioned the ledger. Hidden, supposedly. I said, under Rita's step, but keep it quiet. Larkin nodded. Like quiet was a language he understood. The second I walked out, I knew the rumor had legs. By late afternoon, Cal Grady appeared on the sidewalk, like a summoned actor. He was wearing a black coat that made him look appropriately somber and carrying a paper bag as if he were distributing mercy. When he saw me, his face lit with that practiced sorrow. Archie, he said, clasping my forearm, as if we were comrades in grief. This is tearing the block apart. People need closure. They need the truth, I said. Cal sighed loudly. Truth, closure, same thing if you do it right. He lowered his voice. I heard something about Eddie, about that ledger. I didn't blink. You heard a lot. His eyes widened with earnestness. I'm trying to help. If there's a copy out there, people are in danger, innocent people. Innocent people, I repeated. Cal nodded hard. Yeah, like Ruby. Ruby's still missing, I said. He made a face that was supposed to be pain. That's why I'm doing this. I'm finding closure. He squeezed my arm once more and moved on, already scanning the street as if he expected applause. When I returned to the brownstone, Wolfe listened without comment. When I told him Cal had used the phrase finding closure, Wolfe's lips thinned. He is preparing his costume, Wolfe said. A costume for what? I asked. For action, Wolfe replied. He will want to be seen as protector even when he is merely cleaner. It was nearly midnight when we took our positions. And yes, Wolfe disliked it. You could tell by the way he sat in the back of the car, with his coat collar turned up and his hat pulled low, as if he could hide from the city by disapproving of it. You are satisfied now? I murmured, keeping my eyes on Rita's darkened storefront. Wolfe's tone was icy. I am never satisfied while I am cold. We had parked across the street, with a clean line of sight to the diner's front steps and the narrow alley that ran alongside it. The place was closed. The neon sign was off. The windows were dim. The block itself was quieter than usual, that late night quiet, where you can hear a taxi 2 blocks away and a distant shout that isn't your business. Across the sidewalk, Saul Panzer waited in the shadow of a doorway, looking like a man who had simply stopped to enjoy the night air. Saul had the gift of being invisible when he wanted to be, which made him useful in a city built on people not looking at each other, Wolfe had insisted. Mr. Panzer, Wolfe had said earlier, is competent at observing without being observed. Saul had replied, so are cats. Wolfe had grunted, which was agreement. We waited. Wolfe did not like waiting, but he liked uncertainty even less. At 12:18, Cal Grady appeared. He came from the direction of the apartment building, walking briskly, shoulders hunched against the wind, moving like a man with a purpose he didn't want to admit. He paused beneath the diner's dark sign and glanced up and down the street. Then he did something that made my stomach tighten. He took out a handkerchief and pressed it to his face, as if wiping away tears. Even alone, he performed. Wolfe's voice was a low rumble beside me. Observe. Cal moved toward the diner's front step. He crouched, carefully, comfortably, like he had crouched in that exact posture many times. He slipped something from his pocket, a short pry tool, flat and neat, the kind you don't carry unless you expect to use it. He slid it under the edge of the step. The step lifted with hardly a sound. Cal's hands were calm, efficient. Not the hands of a man poking around nervously. The hands of a man who knew what he was doing and had done it before. He peered into the gap, reached in, felt around, nothing. He paused, then felt again, more urgently. His shoulders tightened. His head jerked as he listened to the silence, as if it had betrayed him. Wolfe opened the car door. I hissed, "Boss." Wolfe ignored me and stepped out onto the sidewalk with the dignity of a large man who resents the physics of motion but accepts the necessity of it. He crossed the street with measured steps. I followed, because that's my job, and also because I didn't want Nero Wolfe confronting Cal Grady alone in a dark street. Wolfe believes in reason. The city sometimes believes in fists. Cal heard us when we were close. He spun, the pry tool still in his hand. For a second his face was blank, the mask gone entirely. Then he recognized Wolfe, and the mask snapped back into place. Sorrow, surprise, indignation. "Mr. Wolfe," he breathed. "What are you doing out here?" Wolfe looked down at him, at the lifted step, at the tool, at the empty gap. His voice was quiet, and it carried like a verdict. "You came fast," Wolfe said, "for someone who was already gone." Cal's eyes widened. "I? What?" Wolfe's mouth tightened. "You claim to be a sympathizer, yet you creep behind a diner at midnight with a pry tool, hunting for a ledger that may expose payoffs and crimes. That is not sympathy, Mr. Grady. That is management." Cal rose slowly, wiping his hands on his coat, as if cleanliness could erase the scene. "You don't understand. I'm trying to protect people." Wolfe's eyes were flat. "You are trying to protect yourself." Cal's jaw tightened. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" Wolfe asked mildly. "You appeared at Rita's before the neighborhood knew there was a corpse. You asked about cameras. You sent Miss Rook to an alley before Eddie Lane could reasonably be dead. You attempted to retrieve his ring without touching it, and now you pry up a step, because you cannot endure the possibility that Eddie Lane's knowledge survived him." Cal's face flushed. "You don't have proof?" Wolfe nodded slightly. "Not yet." Cal's gaze flicked past Wolfe, past me, toward the shadows where Saul Panzer stood. Cal hadn't noticed Saul at all until that moment, and when he did, something changed in his eyes, something small and sharp. He made a decision. He dropped the pry tool, letting it clatter softly on the pavement, and lifted his hands in a gesture meant to look wounded. "I was trying to find closure," he said, voice breaking on cue. "For Ruby, for Eddie, for all of us. You think you're the only one who cares." Wolfe's expression didn't move. "Mr. Grady," he said, "you confuse caring with controlling. That confusion is dangerous." Cal swallowed, then forced a laugh that sounded brittle. "Fine. Believe what you want." He stepped back, then turned as if to leave, and, as he did, his eyes darted once more to the lifted step. Quick, hungry, frustrated. Wolfe watched him go without moving. When Cal had disappeared down the sidewalk, Wolfe looked at me. I exhaled, feeling the cold in my bones and the logic in my head. The trap had worked. Not because it proved Cal Grady killed Eddie Lane, but because it proved something Wolfe had known from the beginning. Cal Grady's grief wasn't a feeling. It was a tool, and tonight, in the dark, we had caught him using it with both hands. Chapter 10. The proof that ends the act. If you want to see a man's real face, don't watch him when he's crying. Watch him when crying stops working. Cal Grady came to the brownstone the next morning as if nothing had happened behind Rita's diner, as if prying up a step at midnight was a normal neighborhood service, like shoveling snow. He wore a charcoal suit and a soft expression and carried a box of pastries, the way a priest carries a hymn book, proof of good intentions. Fritz took the box because Fritz takes what he is given and reserves judgment until he has tasted it. Wolfe, however, does not taste pastries brought by men who stage manage grief. Cal was ushered into the office. Wolfe sat in his red leather chair, hands steepled, looking calm enough to be mistaken for indifferent. I stayed at my desk, pen ready, because something in the air said the talking was about to become expensive. Cal smiled at Wolfe with gentle reproach. "Mr. Wolfe, I heard you were out last night. In this weather. You shouldn't. You pried up a diner step after midnight," Wolfe said. "Save your concern." Cal's smile flickered, then steadied. He sat uninvited and set his hands on his knees as if he were posing for a portrait titled Neighborhood Pillar. "I can explain," he said softly. "I'm trying to protect people, this block, these families." Eddie was. He was like family. even if he made mistakes. Ruby is one of us. Someone had to keep the panic down. Wolfe regarded him as one might regard a talking lamp. Continue. Cal leaned forward, voice thick with syrup. People are scared, Mr. Wolfe. They're whispering about gangs and ledgers and payoffs. That kind of talk can get somebody hurt. I was trying to keep things from spreading. You were attempting to remove a rumor, Wolfe said. Cal's eyes widened earnestly. Yes, because rumors are dangerous when they are true, Wolfe finished. Or when they resemble truth closely enough to attract action. Cal nodded hard. Pleased to have a partner in principle. Exactly. Wolfe's gaze sharpened a fraction. Then let us speak of the danger that attracted your action. Cal's shoulders rose in a sigh. Mr. Wolfe, I just wanted closure. I wanted to help. You were trying to manage, Wolfe said. It was only a word, but it landed hard. Cal's mouth tightened. His eyes darted to me, then back to Wolfe, as if searching for a better room to perform in. Wolfe continued, voice even, you have insisted repeatedly that you are a sympathizer, that you comfort, that you steady, yet you possess a remarkable talent for knowing what no one has told you. Cal's smile returned, a little brittle. I'm observant. No, Wolfe said. You are premature. Cal blinked. What? Wolfe leaned forward slightly. The room seemed to tighten around his words. Let us list, Wolfe said. First, the time. The police estimate Eddie Lane's death at 11:42 p.m. Yet you repeatedly proclaimed midnight. Not late, not near midnight, but midnight, an exactness chosen for effect. You wanted the neighborhood to remember a time that suited your story. Cal spread his hands. People heard something around. Wolfe cut him off. Second, the ring before the police. Released any details, you stated Eddie's ring was missing. Later you added, unprompted, that he wore it when he was scared, that his knowledge dressed as empathy. Cal's voice rose slightly, word spreads. Third, Wolfe said, ignoring him. The question of cameras at Rita's diner, before there were sirens, before there was public knowledge of a corpse. You ordered chamomile tea, an absurdity calculated to look harmless, and asked whether the back alley camera still worked. That is not an alibi. That is a man checking whether the city saw him. Cal laughed. Too quick. That's ridiculous, I asked, because safety. Fourth, Wolfe said. Miss Tess Rook. At that Cal's eyes flicked toward the hall, as if he had just remembered exits exist. Wolfe's voice remained mild. You approached Miss Rook before Eddie Lane could reasonably be dead. You told her Eddie was in trouble and instructed her to check the alley behind the diner. You sent someone to a body before the body existed. Cal's smile trembled. She's lying. She's a junkie. She's scared. She'll say anything. The frightened often tell the truth by accident, Wolfe said. And Miss Rook is not your only witness. He turned his head slightly, Archie. I stood and opened the office door. Inspector Kramer came in first, heavy-faced and already annoyed at being in Wolfe's house. Detective Mara Wolfe followed, expression flat and eyes sharp. Behind them was Rita from the diner, arms folded like she'd like to fold Cal in half. Tess Rook came in last with Saul Panzer behind her, because Saul has a talent for being present, without being a comfort. Cal looked around at the gathering and tried to recover the room the way he recovered every room, by pouring out feeling. This is a circus, he said, voice breaking on cue. You're all ganging up on me. I'm the one who's been holding this block together. Sit down, Kramer growled. Cal sat down, but his eyes were hot now. Wolfe did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. He had what mattered sequence. Rita, Wolfe said. Tell Mr. Grady what he asked you. Rita's mouth twisted. He asked if my alley camera still worked, she said, before anybody knew anything, and he went to the back, for the bathroom, and took his time. Cal's face tightened. I needed a bathroom. Mr. Harlow, Wolfe said. The pawnshop clerk stepped forward. Harlow, summoned by Kramer with the kind of invitation you don't refuse. He came in too clean and too sad, Harlow said, pointing at Cal. Tried to buy back the ring from Tess, didn't want to touch it. Kept looking at my camera like it owed him money. Cal's jaw clenched. He's lying. Wolfe lifted a hand, and Cal's voice died, the way noise dies when a judge enters. Now, Wolfe said, we come to the only point that matters, prior knowledge. He looked at Cal as if Cal were a small stain on a fine rug. You claim you were trying to protect the neighborhood, Wolfe said. But you were protecting yourself from exposure. Cal's eyes narrowed. Exposure to what? Wolfe's gaze held steady. To Eddie Lane's ledger. Kramer grunted. Detective Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Tess flinched. Wolfe went on. Eddie Lane was preparing to sell a list of brickline payoffs. He was not valuable as a man. He was dangerous as a mouth. Someone needed that ledger, and needed Eddie silent. You did not kill Eddie Lane with your own hands. Wolfe paused. Your hands are for opening doors and steering stories. Cal's face went pale under the anger. You can't prove any of that. Wolfe nodded, almost indulgent. I can prove what you knew, and when you knew it, and that is enough. Cal leaned forward, voice sharp now. The syrup burned away. So what? I heard things. People talk. I'm connected. That's not a crime. It becomes one, Wolfe said, when your connections direct a frightened girl to an alley, so she will discover what you want discovered, pick up what you want removed, and repeat what you want repeated. Cal's mask slipped then, just a millimeter. Not grief, not love, not even anger, calculation. I saw it. Wolfe saw it. Detective Wolfe saw it too, her eyes narrowing like a camera finding focus. Wolfe finished calmly. You didn't mourn early because you are sensitive. You mourned early because you were already at work. Cal's lips parted. For a moment he seemed to teeter, as if deciding which performance might still save him. Then he tried the only one left, indignation. You people are insane, he snapped. I've done nothing but care. Wolfe's voice cut through him flat and final. Too much caring is still a kind of taking. Silence held for a beat. Outside, a car horn sounded like the city reminding us it did not care. Detective Nero Wolfe stepped forward. Cal Grady, she said, you're coming with us. Cal's head jerked. On what charge? Obstruction, she said. Conspiracy depending on what we get next. And we will get next. Her eyes flicked to Kramer. We will also find Ruby Ma. At Ruby's name, Cal's composure cracked again. Fear, quick and private. Wolfe noted it, so did I. Kramer took Cal by the arm. Cal tried once more to twist his face into wounded virtue. I was protecting the block, he insisted. Rita snorted. You were protecting your mouth. They took him out. When the door shut, the office felt warmer, as if the house itself had been holding its breath. Tess sagged into a chair, shaking. Saul Panzer hovered near the hall, ready to melt away now that his job was done. Detective Wolfe looked at Nero Wolfe with professional dislike and reluctant respect. You set him up, she said. Wolfe's expression was serene. I allowed him to reveal himself. And Ruby? She asked. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. You will find her quickly if you look where a manager stores complications, not where a killer stores trophies. Detective Wolfe studied him a moment, then nodded once sharply, as if she hated agreeing. She left with Kramer. Rita lingered long enough to point at Wolfe. Next time you need a loose step, fix it when you're done. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Madam, I do not do carpentry. Rita snorted and departed. When the house quieted, Wolfe leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers again, calm restored. The city outside would keep grinding forward, chewing on new gossip, and by afternoon the block would have another story to repeat. Only this time it wouldn't be Cal Grady's. So I looked at Wolfe. So that's it. Wolfe's eyes held mine. That is the end of his act, and the beginning of the real cleanup, I said. Wolfe's mouth twitched. Precisely, Archie. When a man uses kindness as camouflage, he forgets that camouflage fails the moment it moves. I nodded, thinking of Cal's careful tears in the dark. His calm hands under the diner step, and that brief slip of calculation when the syrup ran out. The street riddle closed, tight and ugly and true. Too much caring is still a kind of taking.